Major policy refinement.
What does it signal to you?
It signals that the administration saw the initial ambiguity and they decided to be very, very specific about which economic groups they're trying to help.
So they're focusing on means-tested assistance.
Exactly. This is not a universal handout.
And this connects directly to, the thousands of questions we've been getting. We know that if you are on a fixed income, if you get Social Security or SSI or SSDI, the one question you always have is,
Will we get it?
will we get it?
Right.
Every single time. And this shift to specifically saying low and middle income, well, that offers a pretty significant beacon of hope.
It really does. But it also means we have to look very closely at what those terms actually mean in the context of, a federal financial distribution.
Historically, when the government talks about relief for low-income and fixed-income people, what does that usually point to?
It's a strong signal. It's not direct, but it's a very strong indirect signal that people who rely on federal benefits from the Social Security Administration, the VA, railroad retirement, they are the intended recipients.
Because the benefits themselves pretty much define your income level.
By their very nature, right. These benefits place recipients squarely in that low to middle income demographic as long as, they fall below whatever that high income cutoff ends up being.
Okay, so let's dive into the nuts and bolts of the payment itself. Section 1 is all about defining this $2,000 proposal.
Right. It's been called a stimulus check, a dividend, a rebate.
The label doesn't really matter.
Not really. The fundamental promise is the same. A direct cash payment of at least $2,000 per eligible person.
And that at least is an interesting little detail.
It is fascinating, isn't it? It implies that $2,000 is the floor, not the ceiling. Maybe the final amount could be higher depending on how much tariff revenue they actually collect.
But for now, we have to focus on the $2,000 figure.
Right. For any kind of financial modeling, we have to use that number. But the clearest rule they've set so far is the exclusion.
The explicit exclusion.
This payment is not including high-income people. That is the only solid stated rule we have right now about who's in and who's out.
And that circles us right back to the target confirmation. The recipients are low and middle income USA citizens.
Which moves the whole discussion away from a universal payment.
Which would be astronomically expensive.
Unbelievably so. And it moves it toward a means-tested approach that's based just on income.
This reliance on an income metric, it's pretty standard for the federal government, right?
Oh, it's standard operating procedure. We saw it during the pandemic with all 3 rounds of stimulus checks. Income is consistently the easiest, most objective factor they can use for mass distribution.
So how do they check that?
They look at your adjusted gross income, your AGI, on your most recent tax filing. Or they can look at the income data that the SSA or the VA already has on file for you.
And this is where we really need to focus for everyone listening who's on a fixed income.
Yes.
The president did not say you have to file a tax return. He didn't mention specific benefits like SSI or SSDI, which are already, highly income sensitive. The focus is purely on the level of income.
That's the key.
If you are low or middle income, you are the target. It doesn't matter where that income comes from.
And that omission, leaving out the tax return requirement, that's a huge positive for our fixed income audience.
Why is that?
Because in past distributions, requiring a tax return created massive headaches. Just huge hurdles for seniors and low-income Americans who often don't even meet the filing threshold.
So they fall through the cracks.
They do. By simplifying it down to just income level, it suggests they're aiming for a more streamlined process. They'll likely just use existing government databases to find who's eligible.
Which would include everyone getting monthly federal benefits?
It should, yes.
But there's a big shadow hanging over this whole conversation.
The cutoff.
The cutoff. We don't have an exact dollar amount for what high income means. They've defined the group by exclusion. You get it if you're not high income, but we don't know where that line in the sand is.
And until that number is defined, everything is just speculation. And that speculation is, it's really stressful for people who are counting on this potential payment.
It is.
That one line, that number, it defines the entire scope of the program, the total cost, the number of people who get a check. So to move forward, we have to apply some historical context, look at what the government has done before, and make a highly educated prediction.
Which brings us right to the most important question for our listeners. Eligibility.
Exact.
So let's turn to Section 2. Eligibility and income threshold speculation. For anyone relying on benefits, figuring out where that line will be drawn is, it's the difference between getting $2,000 and getting nothing.
And let's be perfectly clear, no official cutoff has been announced. But, when you're talking about large-scale financial disbursements like this, the government typically relies on established criteria. It's about efficiency and consistency.
The best way to predict the future is to look at the past.
Precisely.
So what did that history tell us? If we look at the 3 rounds of stimulus checks during the pandemic,
Which were very recent.
very recent, the income thresholds they used were remarkably consistent across all 3 payments.
And they were aimed at the exact same groups, middle and low-income households who were struggling.
So based on that, what can we project?
Well, based on those past federal actions, we can anticipate a very specific structure. For an individual, the high-income cutoff would likely be drawn somewhere around $75,000 a year in adjusted gross income.
$75,000 for a single filer. What about a married couple?
For a married couple filing jointly, that cutoff would probably be set at or very near $150,000 per year. This is the model they've used multiple times. It's tried and true.
We have to stress these are still speculative numbers.
They are, but they are robust predictions. The source material we're looking at notes that setting these kinds of cutoffs would make, and I quote, a couple 100 million people eligible.
And that lines up with the massive scale they're talking about.
It does. If the numbers were lower, say $40,000 for an individual, the distribution would be much smaller, much cheaper. But $75,000, that seems to be the historical sweet spot.
Let's give our listeners some context for that number.
Please. It's important. The average household income in the U.S. last year was around $83,000.
Okay, so if your individual income is $75,000, you are still below the national household average.
Exactly. Which means it is highly, highly unlikely that incomes of, say, $60,000 or $70,000 would be considered high income.
They'd fall squarely in the middle income bracket. It would make no sense, politically or economically, to set a high-income cutoff that's below the average household's earnings.
And this, right here, this is the central point of reassurance for our fixed income audience.
Go on.
If you're on fixed income, if you receive Social Security retirement or SSI or SSDI, your income is, by definition, usually far, far below that national average.
The average Social Security check is what, about $1,800 a month?
Around there, yes, which comes out to less than $22,000 a year. And SSI is significantly lower than that.
So that puts you firmly in the low-income bracket. You are nowhere near that anticipated $75,000 cutoff for an individual.
Not even close. Based on the explicit language, low and middle income, people getting fixed benefits are strongly, strongly implied to be the intended recipients. Your financial situation is often the very reason you get these benefits in the first place. You are the demographic they are trying to help.
So we can say with a pretty high degree of confidence that if this proposal passes with thresholds, like we've seen before,
you, the fixed income recipient, should consider yourself a primary target for this payment. The uncertainty really isn't about your income status. It's about the political will and, well, the financial capability to actually pull off a payment this big.
So we've answered that core question. The proposal is targeting you. But none of it matters if the government can't actually pay for it.
And that brings us to the most complex and, frankly, contentious part of this deep dive.
The financial engine.
Section 3, the financial engine. We have to talk about the money. Specifically, how they plan to fund these $2,000 payments using massive tariff income.
This is the really new part of the plan. It's what separates it from past stimulus ideas.
It's new and, you could argue, pretty risky.
Let's start with the numbers, because the numbers we have are just staggering.
They are. The U.S. has brought in about $195 billion in tariff revenues just so far this year.
$195 billion.
To put that in perspective, revenues are averaging about $1 billion a day.
$1 billion a day.
Or roughly $30 billion a month flowing into the U.S. Treasury just from tariffs.
And if that pace continues,
if it's sustained, the U.S. is on track to bring in about $350 billion over a full 12-month period.
But the political math they're using is even bigger than that.
Much bigger. They're using long-term projections. The government is apparently expecting over $3 trillion in tariff revenues over the next 10 years.
$3 trillion. That's a massive figure. But let's compare it to the immediate cost of this plan.
We have to.
So we need to figure out the total price tag. To do that, we need to estimate how many people would be eligible.
And for that, we can look back at a historical metric. The last big one, the $1,400 stimulus check, went out about 5.5 years ago.
And it reached about 85% of the population.
Right. That historical benchmark accounted for about 284 million people in the country who got a check. And that includes dependents who qualified.
So even if this new low and middle income definition excludes some high earners, 284 million is still a really solid high-end estimate.
It's the maximum number of people who might get a $2,000 payment.
So let's do the math. We take that maximum estimate, 284 million people. We multiply that by the proposed $2,000.
And you get a colossal number.
$568 billion. That's what the government would need to finance the full distribution.
And here is the immediate, unavoidable mathematical problem.
The snag.
The snag. If we look at the cash flow right now, the current annual projection for tariff revenue is $350 billion.
Okay, so $350 billion in a year, but they need $568 billion.
Right. $350 billion is only about 61% of what they need for a full immediate distribution. And even worse, they've only collected $195 billion so far this year.
So if they wanted to send the checks today, they are short by over $370 billion.
Logically, mathematically, based on the current balance sheet, the money is simply not there. It's not sitting in an account waiting to be sent out.
So they can't fund it with cash on hand. We have some major...
Interpreting existing laws about specific benefit payments?
So like adjusting payments from the Social Security Administration or the VA?
Potentially. It could be framed as an advance or a special adjustment, but that's usually very complex because those programs have their own very specific legislative language that's hard to get around.
So the bottom line here is this exploration phase is real. They're on a kind of legal scavenger hunt.
That's a great way to put it. They are on a high-stakes legal scavenger hunt to find the money and the authority to send it because they've committed their institutional reputation to it.
The repetition of that $2,000 number then isn't just messaging.
No, it's a sign that they've made a promise and now they have to find a way to keep it. The pressure on them to deliver now is just enormous given how public and how specific this promise has become.
They've really gone all in.
They have, and failure to deliver the full $2,000 could lead to a catastrophic loss of credibility, especially with the very people they're trying to support.
Okay, so given that intense focus on delivery, let's drill down into what we know about eligibility. This is the practical information that you, our audience, really need to know.
Right. So we start with the broadest message, the one the president used, which was simply everybody except for high-income people.
It's very wide, very inclusive language.
It is. It's designed to be.
Yeah.
But the more specific, more administratively actionable number came from the Treasury Secretary.
Right. When he confirmed they were looking at the details for individuals with income under $100,000.
And for you, the listener, whether you're a retiree living off a moderate pension or a low-income veteran or someone on a fixed income just trying to keep up with costs, that $100,000 figure is absolutely crucial.
Why is it so important?
Because it shows the payment is clearly targeted toward the middle and lower income brackets. It's aimed at the people who have been disproportionately crushed by this current inflationary environment.
That number, it feels like an acknowledgement of where the economic pain actually is. When you think about families making $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year, their budgets have been strained to the breaking point by housing, food, and energy costs. So setting that ceiling at $100,000, it ensures a really broad segment of the economically anxious public is included.
It really does. It focuses the aid where inflation has had the most destructive effect on, purchasing power and just basic stability.
It's also a strategic choice, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's a strategic decision to maximize the public perception of support while still maintaining some degree of fiscal responsibility by excluding the highest earners. It frames the payment as essential relief, not just some generalized stimulus giveaway.
Right. Okay, so let's pivot to the amount itself, the non-negotiable anchor of this whole conversation.
Right.
That $2,000 price tag.
The analysis we've seen suggests the public is, quote, very much sold on this idea of a $2,000 payment.
So that number, that expectation, is now firmly set in the public's mind.
It really is. And this brings us into the realm of behavioral economics, specifically something called the anchoring effect.
Explain that. What's the anchoring effect?
Well, once the administration publicly anchors the expectation at $2,000, any lower number, say, if they came out and offered $600 or $1,000,
people wouldn't see it as a gain.
Exactly. It would be perceived as a painful loss relative to the expectation that was already set. It's a psychological trap.
So the administration is risking a huge amount of public trust if they even think about trying to pull back now.
A significant amount. The analysis we have warns that reducing the figure now would, quote, irritate people more than anything.
It's an asymmetrical risk then.
A very asymmetrical risk. The political benefit of delivering $2,000 is high, for sure, but the political cost of delivering, say, $1,000 is catastrophic. It would disproportionately hurt their credibility.
So, in a way, they've put themselves in their own political trap.
They absolutely have. They can't just deliver some relief anymore. They have to deliver this specific amount of relief.
The commitment to that higher $2,000 figure, it really signals that this payment is designed to be substantial. It's real material relief.
Right. It's something that can actually help bridge a financial gap for a struggling family. It's not just a token gesture that, disappears after one trip to the gas station or the grocery store.
So this means we can be reasonably certain that if the administration successfully navigates these legal options and the money does get delivered,
the amount will be $2,000.
or maybe even a little more, given the president's tendency to sometimes float higher numbers.
That's possible, but we can be almost certain it won't be less. The political cost of failing to deliver that specific $2,000 figure is now, I think, greater than the administrative and legal cost of finding the means to actually deliver it.
That's a really powerful point. The $2,000 has become this political promise with the force of an institutional commitment.
It has. And reducing it now would just be seen as a profound betrayal, especially by the low-income folks who are really counting on that specific level of support.
And looking at this whole situation, you realize the administration has really maneuvered itself into an extremely precarious political spot. They are, and I'm quoting the analysis again, really painting themselves into an extremely tight corner by so consistently promoting this $2,000 dividend.
It makes the delivery not just a policy decision.
No, it's a high-stakes test of their political competence.
The stakes just could not be clearer. The analysis warns that if they, quote, do not follow through with this, their credibility and their trust is going to go down the toilet.
And you have to remember who they've targeted with this promise.
Exactly. They've specifically targeted low to middle income earners. That's a crucial voting bloc. And it's the group that is currently bearing the absolute brunt of economic anxiety.
So to fail to deliver financial relief to them after making such a specific promise,
it would result in a massive loss of faith among that core constituency. It would be a political disaster.
But this political gamble, it also kind of reflects a deep recognition of financial need, doesn't it?
I think it does. They seem to be willing to take this huge risk of committing publicly before they've even finalized the mechanism, because they believe the financial hardship out there is so severe.
So it requires this level of intervention, and they need to be the ones seen delivering it.
That seems to be the calculation. And we can really understand why $2,000 is the bare minimum acceptable figure when we track the history of the proposed relief amounts just this year.
Right. There's a clear upward trajectory in their own internal assessment of what's needed.
A very clear one. It tells us that those earlier, smaller proposals, they just failed to generate enough political or public momentum.
Which suggests they were just inadequate to meet the challenge.
Let's track that history. Back in February, the initial idea was much more abstract. It was this $5,000 Doge dividend.
Right. That was more of a concept, a very high initial anchor, but maybe less serious in its implementation details.
Exactly. Then the discussion got much more concrete, but also more fiscally conservative in August. That's when we heard about this $600 payment.
And that was tied to the American Worker Rebate Act of 2025.
Right, so that was a legislatively backed figure. But the fact that it was floated and then pretty much ignored or raised immediately tells you that $600 was quickly deemed insufficient.
I mean, for a family dealing with a rent hike or a spike in their utility bills, $600 is a drop in the bucket.
It is. It fails to provide that psychological or material relief that's really needed. So then by early October, the figure had already basically doubled.
That's when the talk was $1,000 to $2,000.
Which indicates a growing political consensus, or maybe, a reaction to their own internal polling, that those lower amounts just weren't addressing the true gravity of the economic climate for middle-class and low-income families.
And that finally brings us to the current commitment, which was set in mid-November.
At least $2,000 or more. The fact that the president has continually increased the number every time he talks about it is a really powerful political signal.
It shows a recognition that $600 or $1,000 just won't move the needle for families on fixed incomes struggling with this inflation.
It has to be substantial to be effective, and now the commitment is firmly locked at the highest end of that scale. They've accepted the premise that the relief must be 2,000 or higher to be both economically effective and politically successful.
And this leads us to a really critical point, the role of public support in all of this.
Yes. The analysis explicitly suggests there's a positive feedback loop here. The more sustained public excitement and support there is for this $2,000 idea, the more momentum it gains.
Making it, quote, more likely it is to actually happening.
Which means the public is an active participant in this outcome. It's not passive.
So if the public were to just, sit here and act like, we don't care about $2,000, as the source puts it.
That lack of interest could genuinely allow the commitment to fade away. They could let it die on the vine.
So public anticipation and continued attention are actually driving political accountability.
They absolutely are. By showing support, by demanding answers, by just keeping this discussion alive, the public is effectively adding more pressure and political necessity to ensure that this commitment is fulfilled.
So that collective voice is what's critical to forcing this $2,000 commitment through whatever complicated administrative process they're exploring.
Exactly. So if you're an individual relying on benefits, a retiree, a low-income worker, and you are counting on this $2,000 dividend, your interest and your sustained attention are actually essential to maintaining the pressure on the White House to find and finalize that legal path forward.
The higher the public anticipation, the less likely they are to fail. Okay, now we come to what is probably the most important section for our listeners who are focused on practical financial planning. What is the current verifiable status of this payment, and what are the crucial logistical details that are still missing? We need to be really clear here.
Yes, let's reemphasize the current state. It is, as we've said, a high-tension scenario. It's commitment versus the delivery mechanism.
So the $2,000 amount has been publicly confirmed as a definite goal, an institutional plan.
And this is the big but, it is not yet approved or finalized.
Meaning the entire focus remains on exploring all legal options to figure out how the money can be distributed.
Right. They've confirmed the, $2,000. They've confirmed the coup under $100,000 in income. But the how, the specific legal mechanism, that is the current bottleneck.
And the hope, as you said, is that by looking at these administrative pathways, they can find a quicker route.
A non-traditional, faster route. But that search for legal authority, it creates this void of logistical information that we have to address with, real clarity and compassion for our audience, who are often managing extremely tight, fixed budgets.
So let's be blunt. Since they're still exploring the mechanism, we cannot give you an official timeline.
There is no firm date for when this $2,000 will arrive. We can't give you a date because the authorizing mechanism, the how, is what will define the when.
Furthermore, we have no final details on the physical logistics. How is the money actually going to get to you?
Will it be a direct deposit through the existing Treasury system, the same way you get your Social Security or SSI? Will it be a paper check in the mail? Could they leverage the existing Direct Express cards?
And we don't have any specific schedules, like those ones that divide payments by birth date or benefit type.
Not yet. Without that finalized legal mechanism, those details are impossible to know.
And this is where the detailed analysis for our low to middle income listeners becomes absolutely paramount. Because right now we have zero information about the vital financial protections that are necessary to make sure this $2,000 is actually helpful and not, harmful.
Let's break down the three biggest logistical unknowns that could cause harm: tax status, garnishment protection, and benefit cliffs.
Let's start with tax status. For so many of our listeners, especially those on SSI or whose only income is Social Security, they need to know, will this $2,000 be taxable or tax-free? Why is that so critical?
Well, if the $2,000 is authorized as a taxable benefit, which can happen if it's framed as, say, an advanced tax credit or some form of earned income, it could force people who don't normally file taxes to have to file.
Or worse, it could generate a tax liability that they just can't afford.
Exactly. Historically, when these kinds of relief payments have been framed as a gift payment or a rebate, they've been tax-free. But until the White House announces the specific authorizing language they're using, we cannot guarantee whether this $2,000 will be protected from federal or state taxes. It's a huge missing piece of financial planning information.
Okay, next up, let's talk about the benefit cliff. This is a major fear for anyone on means-tested assistance. How would a $2,000 lump sum payment affect your eligibility for critical programs like SNA, Medicaid, or housing assistance?
This is, I think, the most serious risk for low-income beneficiaries. Many of these means-tested programs, like SSI or SNAP, have very strict limits on the assets and the income a person can have.
So give us an example.
Okay, a listener who relies on SNAP or food stamps might have a very low asset limit they have to stay under. If they receive a $2,000 lump sum, and that money is not legally designated as an excluded resource,
You could push them over the limit.
it could temporarily push them over that limit, which could jeopardize months of essential food aid, or even more critically, their health coverage through Medicaid.
That is a terrifying thought. A $2,000 payment that's meant to provide breathing room could ironically cause a catastrophic loss of essential benefits.
Precisely. I mean, if you lose your Medicaid coverage, that $2,000 payment becomes almost meaningless compared to the cost of a single major medical bill.
So what do we need to see?
We need to see the final legal mechanism explicitly state that this $2,000 dividend is excluded from consideration as income or an asset for all federal means-tested benefit programs. Until that legal clarification is made, recipients face a real acute financial risk.
And finally, garnishment protection. For those of you out there struggling with back taxes or medical debt or other obligations, will this $2,000 be safe from debt collectors?
This protection is absolutely vital. We saw with past relief payments that specific legislative language was required to shield those funds from both private and public debt collection.
Things like garnishments for overdue student loans or even child support payments.
All of it. If the administration uses an executive action or an interpretation of Title 31, the authorizing document must contain explicit language that grants this payment immunity from garnishment. Without that explicit protection, that $2,000 could literally vanish the moment it hits the bank account of someone who is struggling with debt.
So to sum this up, the political commitment to the $2,000 figure seems absolute, but the practical usefulness of it for low-income individuals hinges entirely on these three missing protections: tax status, benefit protection, and garnishment protection.
Yes, we have to maintain a logical, critical mind here. The commitment is real, the political pressure is intense, but until the administration announces the specific legal mechanism they are using, all of those vital logistical details, the when, the how, and the critical protections that make the payment safe for you to receive, they remain the next pieces of information we are all urgently waiting for.
So your job, as the informed and financially conscious listener, is to understand that the $2,000 is confirmed as a promise, but the practical delivery is still pending the successful completion of this White House legal exploration. And we will be tracking the moment they announce that mechanism.
Because that is the moment all of these critical logistical details will suddenly become clear.
And we will finally know if this $2,000 is truly safe for you to receive. Okay, let's quickly reinforce the most important facts from this deep dive so you walk away with the confirmed truth and a clear understanding of what's next.
First, the amount. The White House, at the absolute highest levels, is politically locked into the $2,000 payment. The anchoring effect makes the political cost of reducing that amount just too high for them to backtrack now.
Second, the target. All discussions confirmed they are focusing on those with income under that $100,000 threshold. That specifically targets the middle and lower income brackets who are most strained by inflation.
And third, the status. It is not approved yet. But officials are actively, urgently seeking an administrative pathway. They're exploring all available legal options to make it happen outside of the potentially slow process of congressional approval.
And if we connect all this to the bigger picture, this commitment to $2,000, it really highlights the political recognition that substantial financial aid, not just some token payment, is desperately needed right now.
It is. It's an admission that they need to address the persistent economic challenges for fixed-income families and low-income workers in a meaningful way.
And this high-stakes hunt for a legal option, it really demonstrates an urgency to deliver this money as fast as possible.
It does. The administration is in a genuine race to fast-track real money to real people. But the moment they choose that legal path is the moment we will finally get the answers on tax, benefit, and garnishment protections that actually make this payment useful and safe for you.
This level of commitment is rare, and it shows that you, the low to middle income earners across the country, you are being seen and heard in your urgent need for financial support. We're going to continue to track every single detail, especially the announcement of those specific legal mechanisms and the timelines and protections that come with it.
So you know exactly when this crucial $2,000 relief is set to arrive, and more importantly, whether it is financially safe for you to receive.
The analysis gave us a powerful final thought to leave you with, suggesting that public momentum drives political action. So for you, the listener, the ultimate question is this: how strong is your support for this $2,000 dividend, and how will that collective, sustained attention ensure the promise is kept and the money is delivered with all the necessary financial protections in place?
Don't miss the moment those crucial logistical details drop, because that is the moment this commitment becomes real-world cash flow for you.
We strongly encourage you to subscribe right now and turn on those notifications so you never miss an important update on this $2,000 payment. Please like this deep dive, share it with your friends or family who also need this financial help, and comment below with your questions and your perspectives on this institutional commitment.
We thrive on your insights and engagement.
We'll catch you on. You are about to hear about a major financial update that, for millions of Americans, could provide some really significant and immediate relief.
And this isn't just a rumor.
No, not at all. This isn't wishful thinking. We have confirmation of a concentrated high-level commitment coming directly from the White House.
Right.
A commitment to deliver a payment of at least $2,000 straight to you.
In the form of a dividend or, a stimulus check.
And we can verify the extraordinary level of seriousness here.
We can. We are analyzing 5 distinct, really high-profile data points from the administration that when you put them all together, they mean something big.
What's that?
It means the administration has, well, they've effectively cornered themselves. They have gone so far in their public commitment that backing out now would be extremely difficult.
So we're going to unpack the critical details.
We are. Who qualifies? Why the administration believes they can fund this whole thing using tariff revenue, which is a big question.
A huge question.
And what specific steps they have to take next to make this payment a reality for you.
This deep dive is, it's absolutely critical information, especially if you rely on a fixed or a limited income. If you are a senior, a retiree, or if you're currently receiving benefits like Social Security, SSDI, or SSI.
Which is our program for the lowest income seniors and disabled people.
Exactly. For you, this potential $2,000 payment could be life-changing. It really could be the breathing room you need against this relentless inflation.
Yeah.
We're going to analyze the statements from 3 very high-profile officials: the economic advisor, the Treasury Secretary, and the press secretary, to give you a clear, concise picture of the political gravity and, of course, the financial specifics of this payment. Okay, let's unpack this. Our deep dive today is into a potential financial dividend of $2,000 or more.
At least $2,000.
Announced by the president, and it has received immediate, high-level, and frankly, highly unusual support from across the administration's top ranks.
Right.
For you, the learner, who needs quick, reliable, actionable financial knowledge, our mission is very clear. We need to verify the depth of this commitment and distill these early, crucial details about who qualifies and how this payment is being funded.
And we really need to address the controversial use of tariff revenue.
We do.
What's fascinating here is not just the dollar amount, it's the level of kind of synchronized administrative buy-in.
What do you mean by that?
Well, when you have the economic advisor, the Treasury Secretary, and the press secretary all speaking in unison right away, backing the president's public posts.
It's not just a coincidence.
No, it transforms a political idea into an official administrative challenge. It means the gears of the White House machinery are turning right now, actively studying the logistics and the legal pathway to get this payment delivered.
So this isn't just a political trial balloon. It's more than that.
Much more. When cabinet-level officials attach their reputations to a specific, unlegislated financial figure like $2,000, it creates this powerful internal momentum.
So we're going to synthesize the weight of this collective commitment. The president's own repeated promise and these statements from the 3 top officials to understand the full scope of what the White House is now obligated, at least politically, to deliver.
It's the speed and the concentration of these 5 affirmations, all in such a tight time frame. That's what signals genuine intent. The commitment is so deep that the political cost of failure is now astronomically high.
And that creates a sort of self-imposed deadline, an urgency.
Exactly, an urgency that makes this proposal stand out from others we've tracked in the past.
Okay, let's start with the announcement itself, the anchor point for this whole policy discussion.
The core claim.
It came directly from the president, the distribution of at least $2,000 in the form of a dividend.
And the repetition is key here. He didn't just float the idea once.
No.
The source material shows a second immediate post doubling down on that $2,000 minimum payment.
And what does that tell you?
It confirms that the figure is fixed in the administration's intent. They haven't given themselves any wiggle room to propose, $500 or $1,000 later. They are publicly committed to that minimum amount.
But that $2,000 figure it's substantial.
Yeah.
For so many of our listeners on fixed incomes, where the average Social Security benefit is hovering around, what, $1,700 a month?
Right around there, yeah.
So $2,000 is more than a month's income. It's not just a nice bonus.
No, it's survival for some.
It represents covering an unexpected car repair, or catching up on overdue utility bills, or just buying essential medications without having to choose.
Right.
But as you noted, the real story is the immediate and synchronized backup. This is where we see the administrative machinery really start to engage.
That's right. We look first at Kevin Hassett, the economic advisor. His input is crucial because his job is to determine the financial feasibility. He's the architect of the policy's financial foundation, so to speak.
So Hassett is the one responsible for getting the numbers straight. What did his initial review conclude, specifically about how this payment could be made without, increasing the national debt?
Hassett's primary finding provided the unique and politically advantageous spin on this. He confirmed that based on his review of the tariff revenue.
The money coming in from tariffs on imported goods.
Exactly, the money currently flowing into the Treasury from that. He says there would be enough money to pay for the $2,000 checks without needing to go into the rest of the budget.
Okay, that claim about tariff funding is absolutely critical. What happens politically if the numbers that Hassett provided, if they turn out to be wrong?
It introduces immense political risk. I mean, Hassett is lending his professional credibility to this idea that this is debt-free relief.
Which is a huge selling point.
A massive selling point. This claim immediately differentiates the proposal from past stimulus packages, which, relied heavily on deficit spending.
Right.
By tying the funding to existing tariff revenue, it becomes so much more politically palatable to lawmakers who might otherwise resist these kinds of direct payments. It changes the narrative from spending to redistribution.
And Hassett also clarified the procedural path forward, right?
Yeah.
He confirmed that this payment will require legislation.
Yes. That single sentence cuts off any speculation that this could be some kind of quick executive order.
It has to go through Congress.
It has to go through Congress. And his concluding point was just as important. He confirmed the matter is being actively studied and is in discussion.
And what does that phrasing tell you?
It tells us the administration is already in the detailed drafting phase. They're figuring out the specific protective language and the implementation rules. They're not just talking about it anymore.
So we have the economic architect confirming the mechanism and the need for congressional approval. Who is next to affirm the commitment?
We moved immediately to Scott Besson, the Treasury Secretary. His involvement is essential because the Treasury is, it's the massive distribution system for all federal payments.
So if the Treasury Secretary is involved,
they are past the idea phase and deep into the how do we move the money phase.
the Treasury Secretary's commitment is really the functional confirmation of financial backing. What was his specific pledge?
His statement was very, very clear. The White House is committed to making that happen and is currently exploring all legal options to get that done.
That phrase, exploring all legal options, what does that signal in administrative language?
It's code for we are determining the exact legal vehicle, the specific sections of the tax code or existing legislation we need to amend, and all the regulatory steps necessary to initiate the distribution. It confirms that active logistical work is underway.
Okay, and rounding out this trio, we heard from Caroline Levitt, the press secretary, who handles the public communication strategy.
Right. And her role was to consolidate the messaging and project that unified commitment. She confirmed the president made it clear he wants to make it happen. And then she reiterated that the team of economic advisors is actively investigating the pathway.
But she also added a note of caution.
She did. She provided the necessary caution. They do not yet have a specific timeline or any of the granular details on distribution, which is, perfectly expected since the proposal has not yet cleared that legislative hurdle.
Let's just reflect on the weight of this for a second, this convergence. We have the president setting the amount,
At least 2,000.
the economic advisor establishing the source of the money and the legal necessity,
The Treasury Secretary confirming the commitment to actually distribute it.
and the press secretary maintaining that public momentum. It's a full-court press.
It is. The source material is very clear. This level of commitment is rare, and it effectively paints the administration into that very tight corner we talked about.
They've created a massive public expectation.
Huge, especially among their core constituencies, seniors, low-income families, disabled voters. If they fail to deliver on a $2,000 payment they have now confirmed 5 separate times, the political fallout would be immense.
And that self-inflicted pressure is the strongest momentum driver pushing this proposal toward Congress.
Absolutely. That pressure gauge is what assures us that this is a serious priority, not just some fleeting idea. The administration is now highly motivated to find the congressional votes needed to turn Hassett's calculation into a signed law.
Right. The commitment itself has become the policy's engine.
It has. We've established the urgency and the amount. So now let's pivot to the 2 most critical practical questions for you, the listener.
Okay.
Who exactly is getting this money, and how deep is the rabbit hole of this whole tariff funding mechanism?
Let's focus intensely on eligibility. This is probably the most vital information for our listener community of retirees and, low-income individuals.
It is, and the administration seems to have defined the target demographic relatively clearly right from the beginning.
The president's initial statement gave us that broad, encouraging framework. The dividend would go to everybody except high-income people.
Which sounds great.
It sounds great, but when we talk about federal relief, the definition of high income can be, well, a little tricky. Did the economic advisor, Hassett, offer a more concrete preliminary threshold?
He did, and this is a crucial figure for you to keep in mind for planning. Hassett stated that the $2,000 rebate would be aimed at families making less than, say, $100,000.
$100,000. That is an extremely high ceiling for an exclusion threshold.
It is.
Especially when we consider that many of our listeners are individuals, not families. Let's discuss the profound implication of that number for our core audience, people on Social Security, SSDI, SSI, and low-income VA recipients.
This proposed income ceiling is a very strong signal that the primary beneficiaries are those living on fixed or limited incomes. For perspective, the vast majority of Social Security recipients and virtually all SSDI and SSI beneficiaries fall well below that $100,000 family threshold.
So this suggests the rules will be structured to include them.
It strongly suggests that the rules will be structured to include those who need the relief most. The individuals currently struggling to keep pace with inflation on fixed budgets.
It provides significant reassurance that this demographic is the explicit focus here.
It does.
While the final rules have to be set by Congress, establishing that preliminary income bar at $100,000 means the administration is explicitly advocating for the inclusion of anyone receiving federal benefits designed for the disabled, the elderly, or the low income.
And this targeting connects right back to the nature of the payment.
How so?
Because it's framed as a dividend or a rebate tied to tariff revenue, it's being positioned as returning money to the consumer class, the very families who bear the cost of tariffs that get passed on by importers.
That's a clever political framing.
It is. It allows them to justify delivering the payment only to low and middle income Americans.
This brings us directly to the proposed method of funding. Let's spend some real time on this tariff funding concept, because this is the most complex and, frankly, the most questioned part of this entire proposal.
It absolutely is.
Explain again how the administration claims this works, using tariff revenue instead of, dipping into the federal budget.
Okay, so the premise is that the U.S. government is currently collecting significant revenue from these tariffs imposed on imported goods. Hassett is asserting that this specific revenue stream, this existing pool of money, is sufficient to cover the total cost of the $2,000 checks.
Without requiring new debt.
Without requiring new debt or diverting funds from other established programs like defense or education or healthcare.
That is a massive financial claim. And the source material noted there's significant external calculation skepticism. Why are other financial experts questioning Hassett's numbers? We can give you the full picture of this conflict.
We absolutely do. The skepticism comes up for a few reasons. First, tariff revenue fluctuates. It fluctuates wildly based on international trade volume and political relationships.
That's not stable.
It's a very unstable source for a massive guaranteed nationwide payment. Second, and this is probably the most important point, the revenue generated by tariffs isn't typically just sitting in a general account waiting to be distributed. Much of that money is already earmarked by Congress for specific trust funds or programs.
Earmarked for what, for example?
For instance, customs duties often feed general treasury accounts, or they're used to enforce trade laws, things like that.
So even if the revenue exists, if it's legally earmarked for something else, the administration can't just spend it on a dividend.
Not without Congress specifically de-earmarking it first, which just adds another layer of legislative complexity to this whole thing.
Exactly.
And look, to cut $2,000 checks for tens of millions of families earning under $100,000 would require tens, maybe hundreds of billions of dollars.
A staggering amount of money.
It is. External calculations suggest that the annual tariff revenue, even at robust levels, might not be consistently high enough or even accessible enough to fund this payment year after year if the program were to be made permanent.
So what are the critics saying Hassett is doing?
They're saying he is either overstating the revenue or he's underestimating the cost, or maybe a little of both.
So the dilemma is clear. The administration is using this tariff funding claim as the political justification for the payment, but the financial mechanics of that claim are questionable.
Right. If Congress decides the math is too risky or unreliable, they face a choice. Either use general budget funds anyway, which completely defeats the original premise, or vote the proposal down entirely.
And that legislative negotiation is why we have to now address the critical information gaps that directly impact the practical lives of our listeners.
Exactly, because this is still in discussion. We lack the crucial details that will only be settled in the final legislative language.
Let's focus on those missing details, starting with the impact on existing federal benefits, which I know is the #1 concern for our low-income audience.
This is the most vital aspect for you to understand, especially if you receive supplemental security income or SSI or Medicaid. We need to know, will this $2,000 dividend be taxable or tax-free, and how will it affect your eligibility for other programs?
Can you explain why the tax status is so incredibly important for fixed income recipients?
Of course. If the $2,000 is counted as taxable income, it could push certain low-income individuals over tax filing thresholds, creating an unexpected tax bill at the end of the year.
Which nobody wants.
Nobody wants that. But more critically, for means-tested programs like SSI, the distinction between income and resources is, it's life-changing.
What do you mean by that?
SSI and Medicaid eligibility rely on extremely low limits on both your monthly income and your countable resources, your assets. Typically, that's just $2,000 for an individual.
So if this $2,000 is counted as income in the month it's received, what happens?
It could potentially reduce or even eliminate that month's SSI benefit entirely.
Okay.
And if it remains in your account and is counted as a resource in the following months, it could push you above that $2,000 resource limit, which could potentially terminate your benefits completely.
That is the nightmare scenario we need to avoid.
It is. However, there is precedent here. When prior large stimulus payments were issued, Congress often specifically included protective language.
What kind of language?
Language stipulating that the money would be entirely excluded from counting as income or resources for federal benefit programs for a specified period, usually about 12 months.
And that ensures the payment actually provides relief.
Yes, without kicking people off of essential programs like SNFP, which is food stamps, or Medicaid.
The fact that the Treasury Secretary is exploring all legal options gives us some confidence that the administration is aware of this massive danger.
It suggests they're currently drafting language aimed at including these protections. They simply cannot afford to give $2,000 with one hand and take away Medicaid or SSI eligibility with the other.
So we have to trust that the commitment is genuine and that the drafting team is prioritizing benefit protection.
We do. But until that legislative language is published, we cannot confirm these protections. So you must proceed with caution and keep track of this specific detail.
Let's also touch on the missing payment details. If Congress approves this, what are the chances of a quick turnaround on getting the money out?
Well, we don't have exact payment schedules yet, but based on prior experience, if legislation is passed quickly, the distribution methods will rely on the existing infrastructure,
Meaning?
meaning direct deposit for those receiving Social Security, SSDI, or SSI via established bank accounts, or the Direct Express card.
And what about the timing? Will everyone get it at once?
Probably not. Payment schedules might be staggered based on benefit type, or, more commonly, based on the recipient's birth date, similar to how regular Social Security benefits are paid out now.
So that means we have to wait for the final bill to get the specific dates, but the most likely scenario is that they will rely on the same secure payment methods you already use.
That's the most logical path.
And this leads us perfectly into the urgency and the risks involved with such a large public commitment.
Right, here's where we look at the political engine that's driving this. The sheer weight of those 5 data points has made the commitment itself the driving force.
They're highly invested.
They are. And the source suggests that the failure to deliver would result in a lot of really, really upset people.
This momentum is now powerful enough to actually move Congress. The source material mentioned that lawmakers are reportedly warming up to the idea of these $2,000 payments. Why is Congress, which usually resists large spending, becoming receptive to this now?
There are a few key factors, I think. First, the political pressure from constituents, especially in an election cycle, is immense when a specific dollar amount has been floated by the White House.
Sure.
Second, that unconventional tariff funding mechanism, even with its flaws, it provides political cover.
How so?
Lawmakers can argue, I didn't vote to increase the national debt. I voted to redistribute existing revenue to consumers. That shields them from the common critiques about the budget.
Let's connect this push directly to the needs of our listeners. For low-income beneficiaries, what tangible impact does $2,000 have in this inflationary environment?
It provides genuine financial dignity. I mean, we know that the cost of living adjustments, the COLAs provided to Social Security haven't always kept pace with the true costs faced by seniors.
Especially in certain areas.
Right, particularly in crucial areas like healthcare copays, prescription drugs, and food. $2,000 is not just breathing room. For someone on a razor-thin budget, it's a necessary cushion.
It could mean replacing a worn-out appliance.
Or addressing a critical housing repair. Or just alleviating the chronic stress of choosing between medication and groceries. This payment is about survival and quality of life for the most vulnerable.
It's also about empowering them against debt. So many seniors carry high-interest credit card debt just to bridge that gap between their fixed income and the rising cost of living.
And a $2,000 cash injection can pay down that high-interest debt, freeing up crucial monthly income.
Absolutely. The need is clearly established. But precisely because this payment is so substantial and the news is traveling so fast,
the immediate overwhelming risk is fraud. We have to prioritize protecting our listener community right now.
given the amount and the high public interest, the risk of scams is immediate. This warning has to be loud, clear, and comprehensive.
Okay, listen closely to this. The IRS, the Social Security Administration, the SSA, or the VA will never call you, text you, email you, or contact you on social media asking you to pay a fee. Never. They will never ask you to buy a gift card, wire money, or provide your personal account information in order to receive this stimulus or dividend payment. This is the single most crucial defense against fraud.
And these scammers, they're sophisticated. They prey on the high interest and the urgency. They might claim your direct deposit failed, and they need your bank routing number immediately to prevent the money from being lost.
Or they might say you need to pay a small processing fee via a gift card to activate the payment. It's all a lie.
So what should you do?
If you receive any unexpected contact claiming to be a government agency about this payment, hang up. Do not engage. The government already has the information it needs to send you money through your existing benefit system.
The official channels will be secure.
Yes. Official letters sent through the mail or information visible inside your secured My Social Security portal online.
We advise you to only trust information from official, verified government websites or official mail.
And if, and only if, the program becomes official and you suspect your payment is late or incorrect, the official procedure will involve contacting the SSA or IRS using verified phone numbers found on their official websites.
Or through secure, certified mail.
Right. Never through an unexpected, unsolicited call.
Furthermore, we should probably address the possibility of garnishment. For many low-income listeners, their existing benefits, Social Security, SSDI, SSI, are generally protected from garnishment by creditors for, common consumer debts.
That's right. But if Congress does not include protective language in the legislation authorizing this $2,000 payment, that dividend could potentially be seized by creditors or debt collectors once it hits a bank account.
This is why the legislative language surrounding these protections is just as important as the dollar amount itself.
It is. Historically, with relief payments, Congress has included specific language that temporarily shields the funds from garnishment. Since we don't have the legislative text yet, we cannot confirm this crucial protection.
But we should expect massive pressure on lawmakers to include it.
Oh, absolutely. They have to include it to ensure the money provides actual release, not just a pathway for debt collectors. We will be tracking this specific detail with extreme diligence.
So we have unprecedented political momentum, a clear target demographic, a complex and contentious funding mechanism, and a high risk of fraud if protections aren't clearly communicated and implemented.
And everything now waits on Congress.
So what does this all mean for you right now? We've established, through 5 separate high-level administrative commitments, that the White House is intensely focused on providing at least $2,000 to American families making under $100,000.
And they plan to fund it primarily through tariff revenue.
This is a real high-priority proposal with powerful momentum, but it still requires Congress to act.
Let's reinforce the core facts one last time. The amount is confirmed at $2,000 or more based on the president's public pledge.
And eligibility strongly targets low and middle-income Americans.
Meaning recipients of Social Security, SSDI, SSI, and VA benefits are absolutely the intended beneficiaries.
The next crucial step is legislative action. That action will settle the vital, practical details, the exact date the money will arrive, the precise final income thresholds, and, most importantly for you, the specific financial protections.
Protections to ensure the payment is tax-free and will not jeopardize your eligibility for essential means-tested programs like SSI and Medicaid.
The commitment from the Treasury Secretary and the Economic Advisor to be exploring all legal options and actively studying the matter, that confirms that the administration is laying the necessary legal and logistical groundwork.
We are committed to tracking every development, every hearing, every proposed bill related to this $2,000 push through Congress. This is not a done deal, not yet, but it is certainly the most politically advanced and publicly committed to proposal of its kind that we have seen.
We will continue to watch this very, very closely because for those managing limited funds, this $2,000 could truly be transformative. It could offer security and dignity. But let's leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over, building on the tension we discussed regarding the funding.
The political appeal of this proposal rests entirely on that claim that the tariff funding works, that it avoids new debt.
Right.
Yet financial experts express deep skepticism about that math. So does the unconventional source of funding, these tariff revenues, does it actually make the required congressional action easier to pass by providing that necessary political cover? Or does the complexity and the questionable math of the tariff revenue make it easier for powerful opposition forces to derail the proposal entirely simply by claiming it's fiscally unsound?
That tension, the undeniable political gravity of commitment versus the financial complexity of the funding, that is what will determine whether or not these $2,000 checks reach your bank account.
It's the whole ballgame.
We hope this deep dive gave you clarity and confidence in understanding this major update. Follow us now for immediate verified updates as soon as Congress begins to move the required legislation. We are dedicated to being the helpful voice. The deep dive begins today with a massive financial update, and this one is coming directly from the White House. It's a pretty urgent one.
Very urgent. The timeline is incredibly short on this.
We're talking about a potential $2,000 or maybe even more stimulus dividend payment. That's what they're calling it.
The dividend, yeah.
And if this gets enacted, it could offer significant breathing room for your household budget.
Real-world breathing room.
Especially if you rely on a fixed income like Social Security, SSI, or, disability benefits.
For sure. Multiple high-profile administration officials have gone public on this. It's not just a rumor.
Right. They're confirming their absolute commitment to delivering this money. And they claim, and this is the key part, they claim they found a way to fund these $2,000 checks without tapping into the national debt.
They're pointing to a very specific source, tariff revenue.
So today, we're going to unpack the 5 critical pieces of evidence. We'll analyze the intense political pressure that is now building to make this payment a reality.
And we'll get into who qualifies based on what we know from these initial proposals.
This is what we know right now, and here's why this potential financial help matters to you, the learner.
Let's get into it.
Welcome to the deep dive, where we really try to cut through all the noise and just deliver the essential knowledge you need to stay ahead.
And our sources have been, they've been stacking up fast, really just over the last 48 hours.
It's been a coordinated message, hasn't it? From the highest levels of government. It demands our immediate attention.
It really does. So the focus today is this major proposed financial relief, this potential $2,000 payment that the administration is very consistently calling a dividend payment.
And that's the first thing I want to zero in on, that word.
The language, yeah.
What's central to this whole deep dive is the sheer intensity of it all, the immediacy of the news.
That's it. We are not dealing with some vague policy paper or a political wish list that gets debated for months and then disappears.
No, this feels different.
Very different. The sources are so clear that the level of public commitment, from these really high-profile officials spanning policy, finance, communications,
All of them.
that's the most defining feature of this proposal right now. This is a deliberate, synchronized administrative push, and that signals a very firm intention to follow through.
That coordination, it tells us something really crucial about their intent, right?
Yeah.
So let's start by defining exactly what we're looking at here. Let's clarify that term they're using.
The dividend.
Why are they calling it a dividend payment instead of, traditional stimulus or a rebate? What does that conceptual difference actually imply for our audience?
That is, I think, a deeply fascinating and very intentional choice of language.
It has to be.
Oh, absolutely. It reflects a desire to separate this financial relief effort from everything we've seen in the past. Historically, you hear stimulus payment, and you think, okay, that's debt financed.
Right. Money being printed to inject into the economy, adding to the deficit.
Exactly. And a rebate usually refers to money you get back from taxes you've already paid. It's tied to your tax filing. By using the term dividend payment, the administration it's subtle, but it's deliberate. They are framing this money as a return on shared national assets.
Okay, so like a company paying out profits to its shareholders.
Precisely. In this case, the shareholders are the American people, and the profit is the revenue generated by these specific tariffs. It's a conceptual shift, and it aims to position the payment as non-debt financed relief.
Which has massive political appeal.
Huge appeal, especially in a fiscally conservative climate. No one wants to hear about adding to the debt.
So it's not just semantics. It's a financial and political statement about where the money is coming from. It's trying to reassure everyone that this isn't just more borrowing.
That's the goal.
Our mission today is really crucial then for any learner who relies on timely, verified financial information. We need to cut through the rhetoric and present all 5 pieces of concrete evidence.
And all of which emerged in, a matter of just a couple of days?
Exactly. All pointing to this White House commitment to a $2,000 payment.
Absolutely. And the direct benefit for our audience, many of whom are retirees, older adults, low-income individuals receiving benefits like Social Security, SSI, SSDI.
That's why we have to do a full deep dive. A $2,000 payment is, it's substantial.
It's massive. For someone relying solely on a fixed income, especially where inflation has just aggressively eaten away at their purchasing power for the last few years.
Oh, yeah.
That sum could be the difference between making rent, affording essential prescriptions, or just, regaining some measure of financial dignity and stability.
We really cannot underestimate the real-world impact of a payment this big.
We can't.
We have to acknowledge the potential life-changing nature of this sum. The core proposal sets the minimum amount as at least $2,000 per recipient or family.
Right, at least.
And we're defining this proposal based on those initial announcements made by the president just a few days ago. The speed with which the entire administration then mobilized behind this high-dollar figure, that's the key signal we need to decode.
And that phrase, at least $2,000, it's so important. It means this figure is the floor, not necessarily the ceiling.
Good point.
Depending on how they structure the final legislation, maybe it's scaled for families with dependents, or maybe there's a higher amount for certain vulnerable groups. We don't know yet.
But it shows an aggressive, proactive intent. They want to deliver substantial relief quickly, and that just underscores the urgency they're placing on this initiative.
It does.
Okay, let's unpack this with the first major element.
Yeah.
The sheer political heat they are generating for themselves.
Yes.
The administration has, by making these public statements, effectively boxed itself into a very tight corner, politically speaking.
And what's fascinating here is that this observation is woven throughout our source material. The administration is consciously painting themselves into an extremely tight corner by promoting this idea so heavily and so publicly.
This isn't some cautious leak to, test the waters.
Not at all. This is multiple high-ranking officials tying their credibility and the administration's political future to a specific high-dollar financial figure.
And that political implication is just profound. It suggests they are acutely aware that if they failed to deliver, there would be significant widespread backlash.
Especially among the very demographics they're targeting with this message: retirees, fixed-income earners, low-income voters.
If the commitment is this strong and this public, the implications that the administration knows they really need to follow through. I mean, failure to deliver $2,000 to people who are struggling financially, they could be politically devastating.
The severity of that potential blowback, should this payment not materialize after this level of public confirmation, it cannot be overstated.
Yeah.
The source material stressed that failure would lead to a lot of really, really upset people. People who were, quite rationally, basically banking on this to happen.
Of course.
So this engineered pressure, it creates a massive, almost irresistible political incentive for the administration to devote every single resource to overcoming any hurdles, legislative or financial.
They've consciously chosen to raise the stakes.